Hello everyone, welcome to my team selection ahead of Game Week 7. As the title suggests, it is a sad day, an even sadder day, because obviously the Queen looks like she's in a kind of a critical condition as well. So obviously very sad for the country, whether or not you're a monarch supporter or not. Obviously anyone ill is never something we want to see. So yeah, best wishes to the Queen. And for football, obviously that means that games are in doubt, because if she does pass in the next few days, then that could mean a complete cancellation of football across the country. So, you know, lots of things can happen. That not only that, but Graham Potter is leaving my club at Brighton, leaving for Chelsea. We've had Thomas Tuchel depart as well. So all in all, it's been a crazy last couple of days, all culminating just before Game Week 7 kicks off. So loads to discuss. Hopefully some of you checked out Black Box last night, where I'll go into detail about some of the stuff that I'm going to be talking about today. This is going to be much more specific to my own team and my own plans and that kind of thing. But hello to everyone in the chat. Quite a few people talking about Brighton as well, so I'll talk about my thoughts on that as we go as well. So yeah, strap yourselves in. It should be an interesting one. Just before we do that, I just want to talk about our partner for this video, which is Spitch. They are a partner with Scout this season. It's another kind of fantasy game that you can add to your kind of arsenal each week. It's completely free to play. There's a free to play season mode and sort of free daily games as well. There is also a paid for game where you can sort of put your own money in and win sort of prize monies ahead of that as well. If you are putting your own money in, obviously it's 18 plus only. Be gamble aware, gambleaware.co.uk. Check that out if you're worried about yourself or anyone else and their kind of gambling habits. Obviously only bet money if you can afford to do it. I know times are really hard for a lot of people, and this isn't a way to kind of escape from that. It's just a way of having a bit of fun if you're interested in having spicing up kind of fantasy a little bit and betting a bit of money to try and win some. Should only be fun. But Spitch is really cool. There's a whole kind of different scoring system to it, as you can see here. It's much more sort of in depth than kind of FPL as it is. If you've ever played fan tracks or any of the draft games, you'll know you get points for things like passes, crosses, corners. You lose points for things like missed passes, missing penalties, for being at fault for a goal, losing tackles, all this kind of stuff. So it's a really kind of in-depth scoring matrix. Check out Spitch, check out some of the winners of previous weeks as well, and you'll see they've won with some pretty mad players. So it's definitely something very interesting to play. Don't worry about the season game if you have missed out in the first few weeks. It takes your kind of best three lineups, sorry, the best 5 lineups out of your 38 game weeks. So you could effectively join halfway through a season and still win if you score some big points. There's a QR code on the screen for you now, so just screenshot it and you can go straight into Spitch, download the app and have a play. We'd be really interested to know kind of what you think of that as well. So drop your comments and questions kind of in the chat or in the comment section, and I'll do my best to answer those as well. But yeah, really cool and completely different way of playing FPL. So do go and check it out. Right, let's have a look at Joshua asking about Manscaped. No, not Manscaped ad this time. That was an interesting one on Black Box last night, I have to say. So this is what I got last week. This is my Game Week 6 points, 35 points. Henderson in goal with 1, Trent, Diaz and Estupinian, all with blanks as well. So no points for my defence whatsoever. Salah blanking with 6, Foden blanking with 2, Martinelli blanking with 2. Oh, it doesn't get any easier talking through this. Gross with 5. Haaland got the goal with 9, Gabriel Jesus with 1, and Mitrovic with 5. So just a really poor kind of game overall. I know a lot of people kind of suffered as well. You can take some solace when other people have kind of struggled. It was almost, did you own Tony? Did you own Trossard? No. Okay, well, you probably had a bad game week then. And if you did have one of those, so you probably got into the kind of the 50s. Which was about where a lot of people were. So yeah, tough week for a lot of people to take. You know, the template is strong, obviously, but a lot of kind of non-template differential picks also didn't really perform as well. So not a huge amount of top scores and big scores that I've seen. It was my second week after the wildcard. My first week of the wildcard, which was the last stream I did, went well. the World Cup was a success, I'd say. Obviously, I brought in Haaland, who got the hat-trick and captained him. I had Foden, who got the assist. Quite a few of my players chipped in with points here and there, and I went up kind of 2 million places. So out of the kind of mire of 6 million, right up to about 2.5 million. Back down to 3.5 million after this week. So I'm hoping to kind of get things back on track this week. I mean, not a huge amount to say. I'll kind of talk about some of my plans. There's quite a few things I'm thinking of doing as we go. Let's take a look at my kind of watch list, which is here. So I've updated this kind of going forward. I've sorted by non-penalty XGI per 90. Like I always say, with that, when you're looking at midfielders and strikers, anything over 0.6 is kind of elite. That means they're basically getting you, or expected to get you, something every other game or less than every other game, which is a really nice kind of return for any player. In defence as well, I mean, obviously you're not expecting those kind of returns even for some of the most attacking defenders, but I'd still be hoping to get something like 0.5 from the likes of James and Trent and these kind of guys to kind of justify it. And they're just not really doing it. I mean, James is top of the defenders. He's top of my kind of wish list, really, for who I want to bring in. But his non-pen XG upper 90 is 0.34, which is really low. Obviously, he's been playing kind of at centre-back in all these kind of different positions, and we're waiting to see him playing at right wing-back, for a prolonged period of time. And we're expecting that to happen with Fofana now in the side. I mean, what's going to happen with James when Potter comes in is really interesting. Potter's system at Brighton, as many of you know, has relied on wing-backs very much. He's been quite experimental for Brighton with the wing-back system. Cucurella was the kind of tailor-made wing-back that we had. He kind of converted him to a centre-back in his kind of time at Brighton towards the end of last season. Trossard's been playing at left wing-back. Solly March is now apparently a right wing-back, even though he's actually a left winger. So he's been converted kind of into the other side as well. We've got Lamptey there as well, who's not really getting a look in. So converted wingers have actually been put in that position, which is something that we've seen with Spurs as well, with someone like Perisic. We've seen it with Victor Moses in the time. Sometimes these wingers are kind of more tailor-made to that role because it's a bit more high energy and there's less kind of defensive kind of noose needed as they kind of go forward. So, I mean, we could see that at Chelsea under Potter. We might see Sterling maybe playing as a wing-back, or Perisic or someone like that. It seems unlikely, though, when they've got Chilwell and James, when they're so tailor-made to those roles, and they've got Cucurella too. So I am expecting those guys to start a wing-back, but honestly, you just never know what Potter's capable of. He could decide that James and Cucurella are preferred at centre-backs and move the wingers down. Honestly, you just don't know what that man is capable of. So it'd be really interesting to see kind of what happens with that. Be really sad as well. I mean, James could potentially even move into midfield or something crazy. Yeah, you just never really know. So James is a wait and see for me. I was eyeing up bringing him in this week, maybe for Diaz, because he's just 6 million. He's come down a little bit in price, but I think Fulham score in the next game, and I want to kind of see how Chelsea sort of start life under the new manager. And I think we've got a bit of time to assess it. We've got the Fulham game, and it's Liverpool, and then it's the international break. So I think we've got a bit of time sort of going forward. Looking at some of the other defenders, we've got Williams and Trippier on there. I mean, Trippier is really high kind of on my radar. I'm almost certainly going to be bringing him in next week. I think West Ham away is fairly tricky, but then it's a really good run of games for Newcastle. He's already started the season really strongly. He's already gone up 0.2 in price. A lot of people are moving for Pope as well. I don't think the double up is really on with them, or at least I don't like a defensive double up with any team, let alone someone like Newcastle. And I'd rather have Trippier, I think, over Pope. I mean, 30 points so far this season for Trippier is huge. When you consider like De Bruyne has got 35, Zaha 31. He's got more than Saka, for example, at 28. And these are quite surprising kind of results for a lot of these players. Actually, Sterling at 34 points is quite high. I didn't realise it was so high. So I really like Trippier. I've added Dalot to the list as well. I've obviously been critical of United a lot over the last year and a half, I think for pretty good reason, but people seem to think that's kind of because I hate the club, which I definitely don't. But Dalot is really intriguing. I think United have sorted their defence out quite a lot. They are playing a sort of more pragmatic football than perhaps we've seen. That's sort of borne out in the fact their XG per match is actually lower on average than it was last year, despite them getting some better results. They've got this new partnership now with Martinez and Varane, which seems to be working quite well. Maguire's not getting a look in. Shaw's been ousted. Wan-Bissaka's not playing. They've got Casemiro to come in from McTominay, which will hopefully be pretty soon. So I think generally speaking, United, look like a team kind of on the up, which is a great thing to have. And I think defensively they look good, and Dalot is getting forward. I mean, an XGI non-penalty of 0.17 isn't exactly that high, but when Trippier's is 0.2, he has got set pieces. It's the same as Zinchenko at 0.17. So I'm not saying we should expect big returns from Dalot every week, but he is getting forward a lot, and I think there's sort of clean sheets coming from United. So decent punt, I think, of 4.5. Probably the pick of all my 4.5 or under picks at the moment. Midfield, I've got De Bruyne on there. He's been added. I took him out, obviously, on the wild card, but he is someone I'm looking at with kind of Salah's form dropping. XGI, non-penalty penalty of 0.79 is really, really high. You'd actually expected him to have got more points than he's got. Obviously, he does have a tendency to drop deep when City are looking for a bit more control. He might get the odd rest as well. And he costs a lot of money at 12.2. But if you're asking me right now who I'd want over the next 6 games, De Bruyne or Salah, I think you'd go for De Bruyne. I think Salah just isn't offering enough for his price. The fact we've got the captaincy option with Haaland as well. Liverpool kind of in disarray. 2 at the moment, and other options at Liverpool which look decent, like Diaz as well, Nunes. There's different ways that we can go. Salah isn't the kind of option, or at least isn't showing that he's the kind of option that we've expected to see him be this season based on last year's. So I think if you're wildcarding into Game Week 8 or Game Week 9, I think there's a really key decision to make as to whether you go for Salah or not. And I think for me, De Bruyne and Kane, who's also on this list and has been on my watch list for a while, are ahead of him. So they're 2 premium players I'd go for over Salah if I was looking at it. I've added Anthony to the list as well. He's scored straight away on his debut. Obviously, I put a little asterisk next to his name because he only played one match. Next GI of 0.69 in that game. Nice tidy finish from him. I think he's probably my pick out of the United players if I'm going to go get one. I know Rashford's popular, but I do worry about where he's going to play. Is he in the first choice sort of 11? With Martial there, with Sancho, with Anthony, with Fernandes. That's to me is probably the first choice. I mean, Sancho hasn't really delivered, so I don't expect Rashford to be completely frozen out altogether, but I think there's a bit more risk around that kind of natural right side a player of Anthony, something they've been absolutely crying out from, why they went out and spent so much money on Anthony. So I'm expecting him to improve. I think 7.5 is a good price for him. It's Palace away next, which I think is an okay fixture, and then it's Leeds at home, which again is a great fixture, all the rivalry that they've got between them. So it's an okay fixture on for them as well. And I think, Anthony's going to be someone who excites people quite a lot with all his step overs and round the worlds and kind of all that stuff. He's going to be an unpopular pick, I think, in the kind of the less casual audience. I think people are going to want to do a bit of a wait and see on him. And I think, it's probably someone you'd expect, like your Manchester United mate on WhatsApp who's never played FPL before, to bring him in because he scored and all that. But I think there's probably a bit more to it than that. I think he actually could go on and become a decent asset for us. But we'd have to see what his numbers look like in a few weeks, I think, before I was to move on him. But if you did move for him, I don't think there's anything too bad about that. Sinistera keeps scoring, keeps getting subbed early. I really like him. I don't know when I'm going to bring him in. I'll definitely own him at some point this season, but I genuinely really like him. I've added Saka and Trossard as well. Saka scored his goal. Non-penalty XGI per 90 of 0.46 is pretty low though. Trossard's is 0.44 as well. Trossard's still my pick out of the Brighton players, but I don't think we're going to be investing in them too much, given they now have a blank in Game Week 8 against Palace, and then it's the international break, and then it's a really tough run of fixtures. Plus, of course, we're losing our manager as well. So who knows where Trossard's going to end up. It might be the new manager. Doesn't see him as a left wing back. Pushes him a bit further up front. He actually delivers better from wing back. So people that are worried about that, I don't think there's any real reason to be. I think, Trossard's a hold if you've got him, particularly for this Bournemouth game. But it's interesting to see what kind of happens with him. And I think after this week, we are going to see a lot of people jumping ship off Brighton, especially people playing wildcards in 8 or 9. You're probably not going to have any Brighton players on your side after that. I've added Bowen as well. I mean, Bowen's really disappointing. Not someone I'd advise buying now. With a player like Bowen, who's dropped 0.4, I know the fixtures are good, and I know the temptation could be right. This is when it's going to start increasing. I personally want to see him get some kind of return before I was thinking of bringing him in, because let's say you're bringing him in ahead of Newcastle and he blanks again, you've basically got a depreciating asset on your hands. He could go down to 8, he could down to 7.9, and and then a good run of fixtures, and you're never really sure whether he's going to kind of kick on or not. So I suggest you wait until he gets at least something, or at least this non-penalty extra up in 90 of 0.21 increases to somewhere near the 0.4, 0.5 mark, just to show there's some kind of upturn in him. I think he's the kind of player who I wouldn't tell someone not to buy, because we saw what we did last season. But I think that is the kind of pick that I would class as probably trying to be too clever right now, because the signs just aren't there. West Ham aren't playing that well, and his price just continues to go down. So my advice is to kind of wait on him, but he's definitely on the watch list when things do turn. And I'm sure they will, because he's a class player. Up front, I've added Nunes and Isak. Nunes is going to be hard to fit in. I think the other players, Haaland, Tony, Kane, Mitrovic, these are all guys that I think are ahead of him right now. But if Salah continues to struggle as well, then and Nunes does become this kind of main man. He's down to 8.9 now. He might have a part to play in our kind of seasons going forward. My sense is that might take a little bit of a while, because Liverpool's fixtures are that bad. But I'm going to definitely be assessing over the next few weeks. And I've also added Isak as well, particularly for the next couple of games. Newcastle's fixtures are really nice. They've got West Ham, Bournemouth, Fulham, all to play. So if you are looking for someone a little bit different to kind of shake up your forward line a little bit, then I think Isak is a really nice option. Just 2 games he's played now, so obviously take his kind of stats with a pinch of salt. Kane is nice. I mean, Kane has played now six games, a non-penalty XGI of 0.71. That's entering into kind of elite status, or is in elite status. He's got the pens as well. He's kind of proved me wrong. I thought Son would be the better option out of him and Kane, but Kane is definitely clear, and Kane is actually someone I'm looking to move to next week when he plays Leicester at home, and I'm just hoping that Rodgers is still in charge of that game, because I think that could be an absolute mauling coming on. Let's take a look at my team then. So this is how I'm shaped up for game week 8. It's Henderson in goal. It's Trent, Diaz, Gabriel, Salah, Martinelli, Foden, Pascal Gross, Haaland, Jesus, and Mitrovic. And on the bench is Ward, Estupinian, Emerson, and Andreas Pereira. So I've got 2 free transfers, 0.3 million in the bank. Let me just run through the kind of positions and kind of identify my weaknesses. So in goal, I've got Henderson. I've got an orange circle around him already. Obviously, you've got to be a bit concerned when a team concedes 3 goals to Bournemouth, especially after being 2-0 up. So it's going to be with Henderson relying on save points, and to concede 3 goals and not even get a save point in that game is definitely a concern. The fixtures are good for Nottingham Forest. They're second bottom, I think, of all teams over this season for XG conceded, so they are going to concede a lot of chances. He's got to be in top form if Forest are going to come away from things with points in games. And they're kind of 22 signings now. Aurier's come in. You've got to think there's a lot of imbalance kind of in that side. So maybe on reflection, that wasn't the best move. I mean, I could have gone for Sanchez, though, and he hasn't got a game, so I feel like I've got a little bit lucky with that. I could have moved up to Pope maybe, but I've got Trippier coming in. So I don't think it's going to be a priority for me to move Henderson out, but he is someone that I'm a little bit concerned about, not as confident on him as I maybe was a few weeks ago, purely because of that Bournemouth game. Hopefully that was a blip, and the saves can keep coming again, and Forest can get a couple of clean sheets over the fixture run that they've got. Defence, Trent, I've still got him green. I think he's probably the asset that I'd want to keep. I mean, he was poor, very poor yesterday. You've probably all seen the video of him failing to track back from Napoli's goal. We know he's kind of got that in him to do that. Defensively, he does struggle in some games as well. He needs some of the other players to kind of bring out the best in him. Van Dijk, for example. Matip has been immense when he's been playing and he's not in the team. Thiago was on the bench. There's a lot of problems in that kind of Liverpool team, so I don't think it's completely fair to single him out. Obviously, him going off at 59 minutes was incredibly frustrating, especially when they get the clean sheet. I mean, how him and Robertson both get 1 point in a clean sheet for Liverpool is remarkable, really. Don't think they'll probably won't ever have it again. It's Wolves next, though. You can't really sell him ahead of that. I do wonder if maybe on the wild cards, if people are doing it, they might consider dropping him, because the fixture list is tough. They've got a really poor run of fixtures, and his XGI isn't amazing. So he is droppable, definitely droppable. And I think a lot of people were coming under criticism in the last few weeks for suggesting that he was, but I think he is in droppable status. He's not essential anymore. For me, I'll be keeping him for a bit, and hoping that Liverpool can start to get back to where they should be. With Thiago and Matip coming back as well. But we'll see. Not panicking too much, but definitely someone to kind of monitor. Diaz, I've got an orange circle round. I mean, he's kind of the stopgap, really. I didn't want to go for Walker because I just didn't want to have Kyle Walker in my team. Don't particularly rate him that highly. I couldn't afford Cancelo. I wanted the City defender, so Diaz has come in. The question mark is, do I keep Diaz, get those kind of steady sixes, which City are going to get, or am I going to move him to Reece James and try and target someone a bit more exciting and a bit more attacking? I mean, the way I play the game is always to go for the more exciting options. So I probably will end up moving in for Reece James at some point. And I'll probably be moving on my other player, which is Gabriel, over to Trippier next week. So I'm probably looking at a back three of Trent, James and Trippier for the foreseeable, which I'm pretty happy with. I might end up keeping Diaz, depending on kind of what happens with Chelsea. As I said, I don't think James is a must-own at the moment, but obviously if he turns up against Fulham and gets a double-digit haul, it's going to be difficult not to move for him. So yeah, we'll see kind of what happens with that. Salah, orange ring. Who would have thought that we'd be considering selling Salah? I'd go one step further and think I'm pretty much certain that I am going to sell Salah next week. I mean, the fixtures are absolutely awful for Salah kind of going forward. And I look at Kane against Leicester. I look at someone like De Bruyne that I could get as well. I look at Diaz, who I think is probably a better option than Salah at the moment, playing much more centrally, scoring great goals, kind of almost dragging the team, to goals like he did against Napoli when kind of out of nothing really. So it's going to take a lot for Salah against Wolves to make me consider having him, but I don't think he's going to do enough against Wolves to justify it, because I think Wolves are a decent team, and there's no real signs that Liverpool were going to go crazy apart from that Bournemouth game, which I think was more of an anomaly than anything else. So, yeah, I'd be surprised if Salah was in my team in the next few weeks, and I think a lot of people are probably saying similar, which is quite a surprise. Martinelli's going nowhere. I still think it's 6 million or 6.5 or whatever you paid for him in between that. He's the standout for me. Arsenal's fixtures toughened a bit, but I mean, he had the goal disallowed against United, which was not his fault, unlucky. Odegaard fouling Eriksen. I think we're going to want to cut down on our Arsenal assets as well. Jesus might be expendable if we're going for a front three of Kane, Mitrovic or Tony and Haaland. There's good options around there. Maybe Nunes as well. So maybe you go for Saka and Martinelli, but I think Martinelli is an easy hold. I think as long as he's in the team, and putting up the stats and numbers that he's doing, he's almost kind of the main attacking threat for that side at the moment. So he's going nowhere from my side. Easy hold. Foden's orange though. I don't know how I feel about him. I mean, I was kind of all set to sell him this week. I was going to get in Trossard, double up on Brighton. Kind of all the things that have happened. Not only Potter leaving, not only that game against Palace being called off, and Foden's amazing performance in the Champions League have obviously bought him a bit more time. Now I don't like to see him shipped right over to the left. I like him in the team when Grealish is in there. I prefer him on the right, coming in a bit more central as well. But I think probably we're going to see him moving over to the left and one of Bernardo Silva or Mahrez starting kind of on the right against Spurs. So he's going to need to do something. I don't necessarily need him to score or assist. I just want to see him getting into kind of a bit more dangerous areas and not just hugging that kind of touchline. The 8 million bracket is really disappointing, though. I mean, Foden, if you look at the underlying stats, Foden is the top one in terms of those XG per 90. You've got Kulusevski, Maddison, Diaz, they're all way off and way down the kind of a list. But I still like having that 8 million bracket in my side. So that is one advantage of not moving down to a Trossard, is if one of those assets does it really good, I can move over to that sort of fairly easily. If I do move Salah down, it'll probably be to one of the 8 million assets as well. There's going to have two of them, two underperforming 8 million assets. Yeah, it doesn't sound so good when you put it like that. I've also got Pascal Gross. I mean, he's orange. I mean, it's going to be interesting to know what to do with him, really, after this game against Bournemouth. Obviously, he's a hold for that. And then, Brighton's fixtures turn and it all gets a bit more difficult. He's going to be a difficult one to get rid of. I mean, I bought him at 5.7, so I can go up to a 6 million or 6.1, something like that. I'd probably be looking for a way to try and turn him into a Sinistera, maybe, but it won't be easy. It'd be a lot easier if I sell Salah, for example, and then I can kind of deal with that problem as well, which is something that I might do. But next week it might be Salah and Jesus out to Saka and Kane, for example, or Diaz and Kane. And then I'd still have Gross, and then I could maybe use the money to upgrade him up the week after. I don't know, he's a bit of a kind of an issue, but I think he's probably on a limited life as I think a lot of Brighton players are going to be for a lot of people, because we just don't know what we're going to get. We don't know what manager we're going to get. We don't know what system's going to play. Gross hasn't been good really in FPL for years, and he's having a bit of a resurgence this year, but that doesn't mean that's going to carry on. After international break comes into Liverpool and Spurs. Don't really want him through for those 2 games, so going to have a bit of an exit route for Pascal. Unfortunately, he's on my wall up there. We can't see him, he's just a bit cut off. Forwards, Haaland. I mean, I don't need to say too much about him. He's obviously a hold. His XGI non-penalty per 90 is over 1, so he's expected to get you a goal, at least a goal every match, which is just absolutely ridiculous. He's going to get 30 goals this season easily, I'd imagine. He could even push for 40 maybe, and break the record if he can stay fit. So yeah, it's going to be hard not to captain him kind of each week. I've got Jesus in green. I mean, he's a bit of a reluctant sale, Jesus, and I have kind of stuck with the strategy of deal with your kind of weakest links, and I don't think Jesus is the weakest link in this side by any means. He's an easy hold for Everton. He's a potential captain option as well. But if I do move for Kane, if I do drop Salah, and I do want to move for Kane, I would hope that the 8 million I'd bring in would kind of at least match or outscore Jesus over that period. His price hasn't gone up a huge amount. His price is only likely to go down, really, if he continues to sort of disappoint and the fixtures do turn. So it might not be the worst idea to drop off him. I can't see him hitting huge hauls, against Spurs. I mean, Brentford is in 8. There could be goals in that. The derby against Spurs, kind of anything can happen. Then it's Liverpool, they haven't been great, and then it's Leeds. Maybe you can kind of overlook it a bit and think the fixtures are a little bit too, I think they're really bad, but actually they're not too bad on paper. I don't think he's an easy sell at all, but I look at Kane and I think he is someone I want, and probably the only player I think that can really rival Haaland for the captaincy at the moment, particularly that game in 8 against Leicester when City go away to Wolves. So I am thinking about that, but yeah, I might not do it just because I'm trying to stick with this strategy of get rid of the weakest player. And like I said, he definitely kind of isn't that. Mitrovic is my final pick. He's going absolutely nowhere. I think he's honestly one of the first players I'd be picking if I was wildcarding next week. I think he's just absolutely outstanding. He's got Forest, Newcastle, West Ham, Bournemouth all on the horizon. He's going to be in everyone's team. If you picked him up at 6.5, 6.6, you're going to be laughing because his price is just going to keep going up. So if you haven't got Mitrovic, I think you need to be finding some way of bringing him in before you go. So that's it really. Like I said, on my bench, I'm looking at Stupinan to Dalot this week. I've got to use one of the free transfers. I think my 11 is broadly fine. Stupinan, I mean, he might end up being an okay asset if the new manager comes in and likes the look of him and they stick him at left wing back. But he hasn't looked quite on it for me. I might have jumped the gun a little bit with him, whereas I think Dalot looks pretty good. So I think I'll just do a Stupinan to Dalot this week, hold my 2 free transfers for next week, and then mix things up, maybe sell Salah and bring in Kane, kind of like I mentioned. So that's it for my team. Let me know what you think in the chat and in the comments. Thanks for all joining me. I haven't talked too much about Brighton, but I mean, I don't really know what to say. Depends what manager we get. I like this guy from Bodo Glimt being linked. I think, getting in someone who's kind of played in Europe, had a very similar philosophy to Brighton in terms of the way, fast attacking, possession-based, controlling football as well. Obviously, the Celtic manager is being linked as well. A lot of people saying they don't think he would leave Celtic kind of mid-season. Obviously, they're in the Champions League. Decent performance against Real Madrid, particularly in the first half. And he's a bit of a kind of a cult hero there. So, I mean, Gerrard left from Rangers to Villa, for example. Would he see Celtic to Brighton as a kind of a similar step up to kind of get established in the Premier League? I think maybe he would kind of at the end of the season, but it probably is unlikely for that to happen. So maybe it's a caretaker manager that comes in for Brighton until then. Pochettino's free. I mean, I don't think we have any real chance of getting Pochettino, but I would absolutely love that if he did come in. That'd be a hell of a statement signing for us if we could get him. But yeah, like I said, the Bodo Glimt manager I think is probably the most likely. Doing good things in Norwegian, in Norway, in the Elite Syrian. So yeah, we'll kind of see what happens. But yeah, nothing really more to add. I think Brighton players are a sell after this Bournemouth game, and I definitely wouldn't be buying any in. So that's kind of where I sit with that. If you have enjoyed this video, do give us a like. Do make sure you're subscribed to the channel as well. I'd really appreciate it. And there is Burning Question tonight with Sonaldo and Pras. Sonaldo, I think it's about 6 in the morning in Korea where he is, and it's a late one for Pras as well, so do tune in and give them some support. And then tomorrow I'm back with the Q&A and team news as well, and Seb will be around for the deadline stream on Saturday. So great content on Scout as always. Really appreciate all your support and comments, and people in the chat and everything. And thanks for all the people that watch Black Box as well. Mark and I really appreciate all your support on that too. And we will see you all very soon.